an Irish song written by an American. The music to When Irish Eyes Are Smiling was written by Ernest Ball for Chauncey Alcott's production of his play, The Isle of Dreams, produced in 1912. The lyrics were written by Alcott. The Isle of Dreams was met with less than critical acclaim. Quote, "It differs in no material way from the average Irish romantic drama," said one critic, who then went on to praise Alcott for his new songs, which, in addition to When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, included Mother Machree, and which the critic said were the best he has ever written. The fact that Alcott was only responsible for the lyrics and that Ball had written the tune seems to have been of little importance to the critic. Chauncey Alcott was born and raised above a stable in Buffalo, spent summer vacations in Lockport, and at the age of 19 was an actor and appeared in productions in Chicago, New York, and London. In addition to acting, he produced several shows about Ireland for the New York stage. His other hits with Ernest Ball included Mother Machree, A Little Bit of Heaven, and Sure They Call It Ireland. The Ilion Civic Band now plays a song made famous by a son of New York and a son of Ireland, Chauncey Alcott's When Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
you raise your hand, Elmer?
No.
Just raise your hands, please. Any volunteers? Any of you shepherds? Very well. Ralph Herdman will be our Joseph. Now, Imogen has volunteered to be Mary. I'll just write that down. Now, what other names can I put on my list? Janet? Roberta? Alice, don't you want to volunteer?
No, I don't want to.
I'll be Mary.
Shut up, Gladys. I'm already married. You could be a wise man.
Well, the wise men are usually boys. Of course, they don't have to be, and we could all be a wise man.
Me too. Do you want to be a wise man? Raise your hand. What's a wise man? Just raise your hand.
What's left to be?
Some angel. I'll be that. What is it?
It's the angel of the Lord who brought the good news to the shepherds. There, we do have some volunteers after all. Yes, Opie, would you like to be a wise man?
No, I just wanted to say I can't be a shepherd. We're going to Philadelphia.
Well, why didn't you say so before?
I just remembered. I really want to be a shepherd.
Why not?
I don't know. She just said don't be a shepherd.
I'm not going to be a shepherd. Oh, yes, you are. What's the matter with all of you?
I'm not going to be a shepherd. Gladys Herdman hits too hard.
Why, Gladys isn't going to hit anybody. The angel of the Lord just visits the shepherds in the fields and tells them Jesus is born.
And hits them.
Elmer, that's ridiculous, and I don't want to hear another word about it.
Gladys Herdman drinks communion wine. It's wine and grape juice. In a Chelsea's day. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and Shazam! No, Gladys! No!
Go on, Maxine.
A multitude of the heavenly hosts.
Music. Wise men.
We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and mountain, Lord. I got the baby here! Don't touch him! I named him Jesus.
No, no, no! Don't say anything. No one says anything. Mary and Joseph make a lovely picture for us to look at while we think about Christmas and what it means. Now put the doll back.
I don't get to say anything. Some angel tells me what to call the baby. I would have named him Bill. What a terrible thing to say. What angel was that? There's angels all over the place. Is that Gladys?
No, Gladys brought the good news to the shepherds.
Yeah, unto you. A child is born. Unto me, not that me. I'm the one who had a baby.
No, 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 that just means that Jesus belongs to everybody. Unto all of us a child is born.
Why didn't they just let Mary name her own baby? What did that angel do? Just walk up and say, name him Jesus.
Yes.
I know what the angel said. She said his name shall be Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Oh my God, you'd never get out of the first grade if you had to write all that. What should I do? Should I start over?
5 minutes, Maxine. 5 minutes. Just got excited. And now look, the church is full of firemen and the street is full of baby angels crying and shepherds climbing all over the fire truck and half the neighborhood. Didn't you know it was cigar smoke?
No, I didn't know it was cigar smoke. I don't expect to find cigar smoke in the ladies' room of the church.
All day, and I can make heads or tails of it. Some people say they set fire to lazy. Some people say they set fire to kissing. God says all they do is talk about sex and underwear.
No, that was Hobie Clark talking about underwear. And the only fire was in the kitchen where the applesauce cake burned up. They didn't set fire to anything.
Well, the whole church is in an uproar. I don't know. Jesus said, suffer the
Young virgin, mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Dad, look, Mary's crying. Mrs. Bradley, Mary's crying.
Everybody's like, good job.
Larry, you want to take a picture? Para la Argentina.
Where'd Fred go?
Fred.
Over here, Fred.
Fred. Sí, pónganse todos pensando una foto. Ponete Luis, María. Vamos. Amelia. Yo con mi yerno siempre. Amelia.
Okay, un moment. Wait.
Fritz Lowe's first collaboration opened. Brigadoon, the story of two young American men who wander into a magical village that appears only once, one day in every 100 years, and in that town, true love conquers all. Brigadoon ran for 581 performances, and besides adding the names of Lerner and Lowe to the list of American musical composers, gave the world songs like Almost Like Being in Love, The Heather on the Hill, and the title song, Brigadoon. The Ilion Band now plays music from Lerner and Lowe's Brigadoon. new invention, the typewriter, by saying, "If it's good enough for Mark Twain, it should be good enough for you." Remington and Sons Company, the maker of guns and sewing machines, began to produce the Scholes and Glidden typewriter in late 1873. And in 1874, Mark Twain bought a Remington typewriter and became the first author to submit a typewritten manuscript to a publisher. The name of the book, Life on the Mississippi, and it's still in print today. From 1816, when Eliphalet Remington II invented his rifle in the Ilion Gorge, Ilion has been Remington country. Next, the band takes us to its concert of July 5th and moves to Hollywood with a medley from the pen of the composer of the music for the television programs Peter Gunn and Mr. Lucky, and for the movies The Great Imposter, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Atari, Baby Elephant Walk, The Days of Wine and Roses, Charade, The Pink Panther, Shot in the Dark, The Sweetheart Tree, and Two for the Road. Henry Mancini was indeed a very busy man. Mancini was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but has been named the favorite son of Alquippa, Pennsylvania, where he grew up. He worked as a staff composer for Universal Pictures, contributing music to more than 100 films, and achieved success both as a composer, arranger, pop pianist, and guest conductor. He is the man who wrote the music that described America during the last half of the 20th century. The band now plays a medley of music of Henry Mancini. Of that movie as it plays the Plaza of Execution, Zorro's theme, The Ride, and what our conductor refers to as the ever-popular I Want to Spend My Lifetime Loving You. For number 6 on the hit parade, here is music from The Mask of Zorro. Gentlemen, please, no daydreaming of Zetta Jones. Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, and Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll never know that Sunday. That better be the last word for some of us. On to number 5 and to last week's Irish concert. In addition to the Irish having saved Western civilization during the Dark Ages, and to having an Irishman named Brendan discover the New World 5 centuries before that fellow Columbus, the Irish are known for many things. One of these is their emotionalism. Irish guilt and Irish melancholy know no equal in the world's cultures. The Londonderry Air, or Danny Boy, combines both of these emotions. This song reminds us of a home that was never to be seen again.
First mate's name is Randy, and she has a little concession on board for soda and water, $1 each. She's trying to work her way through school, so even if you don't need something to drink, buy it from her and take it home. She needs the money, okay? In any event, does anybody have any objection if we leave a couple minutes early because there's nobody else up in the store and we're almost full? You ready to do that?
Let's shove off.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Second of all, gentleman sitting in front of me right here, you've got the best seat in the house, but you're going to be disturbed 4 times during the cruise for getting away, for docking, and for being in the lock. You might have to just slide over a little bit. Okay.
Okay here though?
Oh yeah. Until we get underway, Randy, when she comes, needs to do that, and then you can slide right back. Arr. I noticed this gentleman has a map of the canal. Does anybody want a map of the canal? We have them on board. If anybody wants that, just ask Randy. She'll distribute them. Other than that, life jackets in the unlikely event we need them on our port side. That's the left side facing forward. And on the starboard side, that's the right side facing forward. Did I step on your toes? Oh, well, I'm lucky then. If that would have been my wife's foot, I would have heard from the Admiral. I'll be clear. I may be the captain, but she is the Admiral. So, anyway, I'd like to share something with you. I know it's hot here, but I think this is worthwhile. My captain friends in Fort Lauderdale sent me this. This is a true story. An elderly Florida lady went to do her shopping. When she got back to her car, she found 4 males in the act of leaving with it. She dropped her shopping bags, took out her handgun, and screamed at them, "I have a gun, I know how to use it, get out of my car." The 4 guys took off. They didn't wait for a second invitation, and they ran like mad. The woman, very upset, goes, sits in the car, puts her shopping bags in the car, sits behind the wheel, can't get the key in the ignition. For 10 minutes, she tries to get the key in the ignition. Finally, she realizes it's not her car. Now she's really upset. So she drives down to the police station to let everybody know what just happened. She gets there, she tells the story to the sergeant on duty, and he couldn't stop laughing. She couldn't even finish her story. All he can do is keep pointing down the other end, where there's 4 guys, very pale, reporting a carjacking by a mad elderly woman. Described as white, less than 5 feet tall, glasses, curly white hair, and carrying a large handgun. Can you believe that? Only in Florida. They didn't file any charges. If you're going to have a senior moment, make it absolutely memorable, right? Okay, let's see if we can get some breeze going.
Beauty of elephant.
To you folks up front, a warning, I'm going to blow the horn. It's not a loud one, though. It's the truth. Actually, there was only 2 until a month ago, and then the lady gave birth. It's 3 now. That town is so small it doesn't even have a zip code. Hang on, we're going to get a little bounce here. 10 o'clock, where that driftwood is, those are 2 dams. And there goes the Mohawk, dropping down about 12 feet at that point. Immediately adjacent to the Mohawk, an island called Plantation Island. We're leaving the Mohawk. We're going to enter into a man-made section of the canal called a land cut. 4.5 miles in front of us, Jacksonburg and Lock 18. This large green guillotine-type structure we're about to go under is a guard gate. That's guard gate number 5 on the canal. There's actually 24 of them stretched across the 350 miles of canal. And they're used to protect the lock. In case there would be flooding or high water, what these do is they come straight down like a guillotine. They fit into a concrete sill underneath the water, and they block the water from attacking the lock or the embankments. It moves the water back over into the river on the other side of the island. That river will be paralleling us, running along the other side of the island during our whole trip until we get to the lock. Then we're going to enter the river again once we go through the lock. The canal basically is open every year from the beginning of May to the middle of November. When they close it in the middle of November, like now, they'll either let more water go through the river or less water go through the river, depending on whether it's a drought condition or a flood condition. Their goal of those dams basically is to make sure that the water in this section is never less than 12 feet deep and never more than 14 feet deep. If it gets to be much more than 14 feet, that's when they shut the canal. That's when they close the guard gates, because that would begin to attack the lock mechanisms at that time. Supplied by 2 major reservoirs north of Rome and north of Utica, Hinkley Dam and Delta Lake, and it feeds through the West Canada Creek. That's what puts the water into the canal in the center part here of the state. Now last year we had a really good example of them closing the canal. Last May we had several days of rain and very, very high water. The West Canada Creek was flowing very, very rapidly. It was uprooting 50 and 60-foot trees, running down the river, so they dropped the guard gates, shut the canal, and they made all of them. We'd only have to be in the ocean for 35 miles. The rest of the way we'd be in protected waters that whole trip. Here's how that would go. We would head through 18 locks in this direction till we came to the Hudson River. The Hudson River, we go south for about 150 miles till we come to New York City. At New York City, we're going to go under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, out into the lower harbor, off of Sandy Hook, New Jersey. And that's the only part of the trip we have to spend any time in the ocean at all. We have to go from Sandy Hook along the North Jersey shore till we reach the first inlet that's going to allow us into the New Jersey Intercoastal Waterway. That town would be Manasquan, New Jersey. If we enter in at Manasquan Inlet, hook up with the New Jersey Intercoastal, head south. Our next stop is going to be the southern tip of New Jersey, Cape May. Now at Cape May, we could go in the ocean if we want, but we don't have to, because the New Jersey Intercoastal at Cape May is connected by a little 4-mile-long canal called the Cape May Canal that leads into Delaware Bay. So if we go through that canal, come out in Delaware Bay, head in a generally northerly direction, about 4 or 5 hours later, we're going to find ourselves on the Delaware River. And just before we get to Wilmington, Delaware, if we make a turn to our port side, which side is port? I see. Randy forgot to erase the answers again. There's a crib sheet up here. Always sucking up to those passengers, huh, Randy? we make a turn to our port side, we're going to go through yet another canal, the C&D Canal, Chesapeake and Delaware. That links the Delaware River with the upper Chesapeake Bay. Now that So if we go through that canal, the C&D Canal, which handles vessels as large as 900 feet long, container ships, propane carriers, naval destroyers, naval frigates, they all use that coming in from the North Atlantic. If we head in that, head south on the Chesapeake Bay, about 220 miles later, we're going to be at the beginning of the federal ICW, Intra-Coastal Waterway, at Norfolk, Virginia. That's where it begins. That isn't where it ends, but that's where it begins. We head south on the ICW, the Federal Intercoastal. We're going to go through the states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, getting down. We're going to get down to Florida, and we're going to head to Key West. Never again having to go in the ocean. In that trip, we will see several bays and several sounds, the Albemarle, the Pamlico, St. Catherine, St. Andrews, a place called Kings Bay in the south end of Georgia where we have a submarine base where they do secret things. When you go through there on the intercoastal, you're escorted by two little naval patrol boats, tiny ones, about 30 feet, to make sure you don't take out a camera. If you had your camera out, they'd be on board. They'd have it in a minute, in a flash. I don't know what they do there because every time, I've made that trip 14 times now, and every time I go through there, I've never seen a submarine. But they have these large hangar-like structures over the water, and I imagine that houses whatever they're doing there. So once we get to Key West, we have a decision we have to make. We can either turn to port, or we can turn to starboard. What side starboard? Okay, you guys are good. If we go to starboard, we have not yet reached the end of our Federal Intercoastal Waterway. We can continue on the Federal Intercoastal Waterway. Go up the backside of Florida, the west coast, up to a town called Naples on the Gulf Coast Intercoastal Waterway. Head up through Fort Myers, get to Tampa, Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and eventually we're going to get to a town called Tarpon Springs. At Tarpon Springs, on the west coast of Florida, the Gulf Coast Intercoastal comes to an end for about 135 miles. And you have to shoot across the northern Gulf of Mexico, across what's known as the Big Bend area of Florida, to a town in the panhandle of Florida called Carabel, near Apalachicola. Once again, there we would pick up the Gulf Coast Intercoastal, head west through cities like Panama City, Pensacola, Biloxi, Mississippi, New Orleans, get down into Texas, Galveston Bay, Clear Lake, Houston. And if we stick with that Gulf Coast Intercoastal long enough, we're going to wind up at the other end of our federal ICW, all the way down at the Mexican border at Brownsville, Texas. We have an absolutely amazing waterway system in this country. And of course, the Erie Canal is a major connector to all what I just spoke of. Absolutely amazing. Actually, that Gulf Coast Intercoastal is better protected than our East Coast Intercoastal, except for that 135 miles in the Gulf of Mexico. Usually by this time I have somebody interrupt me and ask me how long would the trip from here to down to Key West take?
How long would it take?
I'm glad you asked. He and his wife Kim answered. That answer is, the way we do it, we take 33 to 35 days. We take it nice and slow. We stop at places like Savannah and Charleston and St. Augustine for 2 or 3 or 4 days. Visit all our favorite restaurants. We have a 110-pound dog and 2 cats that live with us on board. We live full-time on a boat. And we just enjoy the cruise. So it takes us over a month. One time we had to get up here fast. In fact, it was 3 years ago, because we were 1812 to 1814. It was a fortified church. It had 30 gun ports, and that was the improvements that were made in 1812. They sealed up the gun ports. This was part of the original Fort Herkimer. There were 7 other buildings here, all fortified as well. This is the last remaining building. This site is very, very historic for reasons other than the church and its graveyard. I will not slow down now. We want to try to get to our appointed time at the lock if we can. And on the way back, I'll slow up. You'll get better shots of the church, the graveyard, and you'll find that you may want to visit this site because there are very, very good historic reasons other than the church and graveyard. And I'll describe them on the way back. Passed our way through those mountains. Dynamite and nitroglycerin weren't invented until after the 1840s. Actually, dynamite not until 1867. All we had was black powder, gunpowder. And that wasn't a very good blasting powder. It burned more than it exploded. So we didn't have the technology to cut a trail through those mountains and open up a path of commerce between the Atlantic and the Great Lakes. There was going to be only one way that that was possible, and that was by building a canal. Amazingly enough, in the whole distance between Georgia and Maine, there was only one place that that was possible, and that was right here through central New York, right here through the Mohawk Valley, because the Mohawk Valley presented the only low-level gap through those mountains, and all the rivers in the valley ran east and west, two very vital ingredients so the canal could be attempted at all. So Congress over there on your port side, picture takers, 10 o'clock up on top of a tree, a blue heron. The limit is 10 miles an hour and we're going about 8.5. That wouldn't be a disaster. But if they go 25, it becomes a disaster. So Congress actually goes ahead and passes legislation authorizing construction of the first Erie Canal. It's called the American System. They send it up to the White House, to the President, James Madison, to sign it off into law. He reads it over, and he thinks it's unconstitutional because he thinks New York is going to benefit much more than any other part of the country, so he vetoes it. So federal funds are not going to be used in the construction of the Erie Canal. That leaves New York State all on their own to try to find a way to raise the money and build the first canal. The city that was going to benefit the most from the building of the canal was going to be New York City. The mayor of New York City, at the time, his name is DeWitt Clinton. He begins becoming the canal's advocate. He makes many speeches explaining why it's important to get the canal dug. People get tired of listening to him, though. They begin making fun of his thoughts and his ideas and his speeches. They begin referring to the first Erie Canal as Clinton's ditch, Clinton's folly, Clinton's impossible dream. But he persevered. And in 1817, he's elected the governor of New York. Now he can make his speeches to a captive audience, the New York State Legislature. He makes a very important speech that year. The legislature likes what they hear. They go ahead and they give him the authority to construct the first Erie Canal. Those gentlemen had surveyed a proposed route for the canal. Across the state, they were well known, well liked. The three men get together to see how they're going to go about building the canal. After a week's worth of meetings, they come out of the last meeting, throw their hands up in the air, and they admit they do not have a clue how to go about constructing the first canal. Clock being able to raise boats around 6 or 7 feet, because the difference between Albany on the Hudson River at sea level and Lake Erie is 565 feet. In order to use the canal, they have to raise boats 565 feet, just like we do today. But in 1825, that was one heck of an engineering feat. Amazing. Now that first canal is going to be strictly a ditch. They don't have the technology to canalize and tame the rivers, so they avoid the rivers. They actually build the canal a long distance away from the rivers and 15 to 18 feet higher, so the rivers will not flood their little ditch. That first ditch is going to be built by the farmers whose lands it crossed. It's going to be built by Scott for $5 a ton. They have 7 toll booths along the way called waylocks, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
From the tolls they collect, they totally pay off the $7 million across the bill in the first 9 years of operation. with wildly historically correct clocks. Everything you see in front of you is a minimum of 92 years old. The blue and yellow motor boxes up on the land on either side house motors that were built by General Electric in 1909. They're 7 horsepower DC motors. They have never been changed. They are the original motors. Knock on wood, they work as well today as they did back when this section opened in 1913. All the structures are the year of 1909 to 1913. The little boat, blue and yellow boat, is not 92 years old. That is the smallest class vessel of the Canal Corporation's Navy. That is a buoy boat, 21 feet long, 6 feet wide. Built by the Canal people themselves. She does light-duty chores these days around the canal. Later on, I'll tell you what she did in the old days. She is only 82 years old. There's a couple things here that are not... One of the amazing things about these motors is they open and close these gates. Now, the upper gates are already open. They're folded back into the wall. These upper gates are 26 feet tall. They weigh 26 tons a side, and that motor is only 7 horsepower that opens and closes them. Once we're tied up, I'll give you the word, then you're free to move around. Until then, please remain seated till we're tied up in the lock. Coming up on our port side now will be that spillway. You can see the river. Down below us to the left, that's the level we're going to go down to. We're going to be lowered 20 feet down into that river. Our lock operator today, standing off to the side there, is Peter Higgins. Let's hear it for Peter! He's been a really good guy, been doing great things for us for the last 3 years. Actually, lately, we've been very disappointed because he really has been letting us down.
Ooh, punishment.
I'll take that one out of the pattern.
Ooh.
That sound you hear, the gates closing behind us. Designed by the chief engineer of the state of New York when Teddy Roosevelt in 1898 asked him to design the most modern barge canal the world has ever seen. His name was Ed Bond, and this was designed in 1899. These locks can stay here for thousands of years because there's hardly anything that can go wrong with them. Here's how this works. We have 34 feet of water below us, down to a concrete floor. The walls on either side of us. Well, first let me remind you of the size of the chamber, 45 feet wide, 328 feet long. These walls on either side of us are 12 feet thick across the top. But down on the bottom, 34 feet below us, they're 35 feet thick. They look like a trapezoid. Inside this wall is an 8-foot diameter tunnel that runs the whole 328 feet. That tunnel is interrupted on each end by a valve. You can see the valve pits either in front of us or behind us. It's the yellow roped off areas. Now those valves look like miniature guard gates. They come down like a guillotine. They're a piece of steel that rides on railroad tracks vertically. Peter, how you doing? And they're raised and lowered by 5 horsepower motors. They weigh 12,000 pounds and they block off that 8-foot tunnel. And that's what's holding the water in the lock right now. Peter has to walk 328 feet. He has to look over the gate to make sure there aren't small boats there like a kayak or a canoe, because when we let this water out, we could tip a kayak or canoe over if they were too close to the gate. So he makes sure nobody's there. Then he's going to go in the little control station, what's called the lower control station, and he's going to begin raising the valves. The next sound you hear will be the valves coming up. Notice the blue boxes in front of us. They have a white light on the side of them that's lit right now. When he begins raising the valves, they'll go out. That white light means the valves are closed. That's why this is so historically correct and romantic, because the new locks don't have all this stuff. Now the lights that are going to take over are that 3-part light tree on top of the box, that sectioned light tree. When the first light lights, the valves are 1/3 open. The second section, 2/3. By the way, you can move around if I didn't say that, I'm sorry. And then finally 3/3, fully open. We're going to lose 2.5 million gallons of water, all by gravity. Going to do it very smoothly, and we're going to do it in 7.5 minutes. We're already down 2 feet. Yes?
Where's the water going at, you know?
It's going into the river.
How?
Through that tunnel.
Okay.
Just running right up.
I got you.
And they raise it just by opening the valve on that end, keeping this one closed. Right.
So if we're looking over the water coming in?
Yeah, there'd be 3 or 4 foot waves.
We're like in a bathtub.
Yeah, it's like sitting in a bathtub and pulling the plug. Going up is like sitting in the bathtub and turning on the faucet. It's a little more violent. Not violent, but the boat's going to bounce around a little bit. It's not as smooth as this. Notice the gate in front of us, the lower gate. That's 40 feet tall, weighs 40 tons on the side. Still a 7 horsepower motor, DC motor opening them. Notice how it forms a V towards the water side, the high water side. That's called a miter V. That's where the 2 gates come together. The gasket material is interesting. It's 2 pieces of white oak lumber. And they use the water pressure to compress the lumber to seal it, to make a watertight seal. In the corners where the hinges are other pieces of white oak. They're about 2 feet in diameter, shaped like a piece of quarter-round molding. And they're called coins. Pronounced like a nickel or a dime, but spelled Q-U-O-I-N-S. They're called coin posts. And that's what seals the water in the lock between the cement and the steel. Now, Little Falls, the next lock down, tallest on the system, twice as tall as this one, decided 2 years ago in the winter when all the water was out of here to check their coins. So they took out their gates, went to check the coins to see if they needed to be replaced. They decided they didn't. They put the gates back in. The interesting part of that story is the coins have been in place for 61 years. So that is very, very durable, that white oak lumber. They can't even find it big enough anymore to make the coins. Now they have to epoxy it together, turn it on a lathe, and then put bolts as reinforcement. Now a minute, look behind us and you'll notice that the coins and the miter V behind us leak very badly. There should be no water coming in, but there is. Right, exactly. In a minute you'll see a concrete sill stretching across the lock by the gates there. That's what the gates rest up against, and that's also the bottom of the canal on the other side of the gate. What is incorrect here historically are these lines hanging down with the blue and white bobbers on them. That didn't exist. In the old days, the canal worked 24 hours a day. Remember, this is 1918 we're talking about now, not the first canal. This is the third canal. And there were 5 or 6 lock operators here, and they would help the barges and the tugboats with their lines. They would throw the lines down to the guys, and the method we're going right now, going down. Guys would keep moving their lines down, put them on these mooring bits on the way down. You see they're staggered at different levels. Today, there's only 1 lock operator on duty at any time. So they hang these lines down. So that's to clean up Lake Erie and the rest of the Great Lakes. Watch them work. They're a bivalve. Each one of these guys is about the size of your thumbnail. They can filter 1 quart of water a day, each individual one. And you can drink that water that's being spit out. That is purified water.
A little cup.
Sure. We do know that 25 years ago, you couldn't see 5 feet into Lake Erie, and now you can see 60 feet deep in the lake. Camp that they're good, but that doesn't mean I'm right.
Doesn't mean you're wrong.
I'm a boater, and I should hate them because they plug up my intakes. When we entered the lock, we were at 384 feet above sea level. As we come out of the lock, we're 364 feet above sea level. Now those are just numbers.
Hello, sir. Talk to me. Come on, girl. Say hi. Hello. Jasmine.
All washed down to block 17. Took them 3 weeks to get them back. Now that included their 2,000-pound blocks of concrete as well. Water pressure is just amazing. 12 miles an hour of water current can move 1 ton of mass. But it's not progressive, it's geometric. Example, 20 miles an hour of current can move 100,000 pounds. So just imagine 500 mile an hour tsunami. And all of that destruction it did. Notice how much narrower the channel is now. This is a natural river. This isn't a land cut, so it's not deep shore to shore like the land cut was. Have to stay between the reds and the greens to make sure we're in deep enough water. If you go outside there, you may or may not have enough deep water to navigate in. Question I get also quite often is if they take these out every winter, how do they know where to put them back?
They probably have to remeasure.
Forgot to ask him.
Okay, good.
How do they know where to put them back?
Oh, thank you so much. Look up on shore. There's a sign with the corresponding number, 491.
They cheat.
The green ones have white signs, the red ones have red signs.
But doesn't the current change? Doesn't the bottom change?
Excuse me?
Does the bottom of the river change from season to
The
season?
bottom here?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there's dredging that takes place. But basically this section is pretty dredge-free. That's because of those movable dams. All the silt builds up behind those movable dams, and they take those totally out of the water in the winter. And when they do that, it all just kind of washes down. It doesn't collect in one place. The land cut never needs dredging. The river very rarely in this area. Dead ahead.
It's a green here.
That bird dives from a sitting position on the water. He can go 80 feet deep, and he can swim faster than a fish. They're amazing. The other amazing thing about them is they have no oil glands in their wings, so after they make a dive, they have to spread them and dry them.
Yeah.
They can't fly again.
I've seen them like
The way the Chinese fished them was very simple. What they did was put a wooden ring around their neck and attach the line to it. The way those birds fish, they go down, they get the fish, then when they come up on the surface, they throw their heads back, straighten out their throats, flip the fish up in the air, and eat it. But the ring would prevent them from eating the fish. So the Chinese got the fish and they used them for fishing.